everyone, this is Patricia here, and welcome to Turtle Talk, where we have all turtles all the time. This is the podcast where we talk about everything Ninja Turtles related. Movies, TV shows, video games, toys, the works. Grab your pizza, sais, and katanas. Sit back and relax as we talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com, manicexpression.com, thecomicbookcast.com, the Reopen Nickelodeon Studios Facebook page, and the PlayStation YouTube channel. Welcome to a brand new episode of Turtle Talk, where there's all turtles all the time. I'm Patricia.
And I'm Kevin.
And today we have ourselves a very special guest. He is currently the curator on the San Francisco Art Museum of Animation, and also, not to mention, that he currently has written a brand new TMNT book. Here we have none other than Andrew Farago. Andrew, welcome to Turtle Talk.
You nailed the pronunciation, which is that's always it's always a great thing.
Yeah, we had the same situation with another author that we interviewed a couple of months ago, Matthew Klickstein. It kind of looks like both Klickstein and Klickstein. We wanted to make sure that we got the pronunciation of the authors correctly. So
you get that all the time too with my last name. My last name is Guglielmo. It's that Italian last name, and people call me Guglielmo or they mispronounce it. But Patty, you got it right on the mark. So I was. Good.
Yay! Hooray! All right, so Kevin, why don't you ask the first question?
Okay, so Andrew, if I may ask for our listeners out there, what inspired you to do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book? Being that there aren't that many books out there, especially a visual book, what made you come up with the idea or the inspiration for you to do a book?
That's a great question. I've written a couple of books before. I've written a few little things. I've done, I've written a handful of Marvel comics. I did, my biggest book before this was called The Looney Tunes Treasury. And that book was, I worked the editorial team at Insight Editions. And that book was published by a company called Running Press. So that kind of put me on the radar over there. And Chris Prince, who works for Insight Editions, called me up and he said, are you busy right now? And I said, not really. I'm up for anything. And he said, okay, what do you think about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And I said, you have to let me write it. I know you're gonna have a lot of people pitching for it, but I'm your man. And I gave him my whole outline, going back to, obviously you start with Eastman and Laird, who got the whole thing started. You have to go to Mark Friedman, who helped put them on the map. You have to go to all the animation guys from the 87 series. And yeah, I said, I absolutely I'm the right guy for this. You have to let me write it. Fortunately for me, I had the right pitch. He liked it. He liked my ideas. And 2.5 years later, there's a book in stores everywhere right now.
Now, how did you get first introduced to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, my little brother and I, we were cartoon fanatics growing up, and mid-1980s, there's some good stuff. There's some stuff that kind of holds up, but one day we saw this commercial, and this was approaching Christmas 1987, but we saw a commercial that said, next week, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on television, Monday through Friday, and our heads exploded. We just said, we've got to watch this. As much as an 11-year-old can clear his schedule, I said, I'm not doing anything next week except making sure that I see this cartoon. And, we loved it from that first episode. Rob Paulson as Raphael, Clang. Did you say Clang?
Clang.
Fighting foot soldiers. We quoted that at each other for, if I pick up the phone right now and call him, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about if I say that.
That's pretty cool.
We went crazy for the cartoon. 1988, like everybody else, we begged our mom for the action figure. Yeah, I went to the closest thing we had to a comic book shop, which was a flea market, Jamie's Flea Market in Amherst, Ohio. We went there, and I said, where do you have all your turtle stuff? So that spring, I got the second print of issue number 4 from the Mirage series, and that was totally different than the animated cartoon, and I loved that too. And yeah, that's 27 years ago that I became a fan.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Especially since, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of the very few franchises from the 80s that is still revered even to this day. And it's still going on with, the Nickelodeon series and the new upcoming movie. So it just shows you how big that the Turtles are still to this day.
Yeah, they've had a few ups and downs. Obviously, there are stretches during the '90s when they went away a little bit, and but yeah, they've really endured. And for something created in the 1980s to still be around and to get a whole new generation of fans and retain their old fans, it's incredible.
So I was wondering, currently you are the curator on the San Francisco Museum, and you deal with things like animation and art. So how did you get the opportunity to work your way to being the current curator for the San Francisco Museum?
Okay, right. So I'm at the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco, cartoonart.org if you want to find us online. We're at Cartoon Art on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, so it's pretty easy to find us. And I started out there as a volunteer in the summer of 2000, and I really enjoyed it. I stuck around. I volunteered for every weekend. I showed up for every special event that the museum had. My wife's birds are very excited about that. And yeah, I just loved the place and stuck with it. A job opportunity eventually came along when we moved into our current location, and that was in the fall of 2001. And I worked my way up from the gallery manager to curator over the course of a few years. And it's been great. I get to work with animators. I get to work with comic book artists, comic strip artists, illustrators. I get to work with comics from the 1800s all the way to last month. And yeah, and sometimes the job comes together in a cool way where I've got my book out, and we're also hosting a Ninja Turtles exhibition through September 14th.
Oh, cool!
And
that's great.
We've got all the original art to the first issue from 1984, and that hasn't really been on display apart from Kevin Eastman's Words and Pictures Museum back in the 1990s.
Yep. Yeah, we heard about that in our last interview from Michelle Ivy. That was partly the reason why she got back into Turtles, and she's currently doing one of the most popular fan sites ever, Cowabunga Corner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we go all the way through the new Nickelodeon series and the new IDW series. So we've got some art from Ross Campbell, one of my favorite artists, who's working on the IDW Turtles in Time series right now.
Wow.
And Ciro Nieli, the executive producer of the Nickelodeon cartoon, sent me a nice stack of artwork for our museum.
That is great.
We've got the new Nickelodeon cartoon very well represented, along with the 80s cartoon. And yeah, if you're a Turtles fan and you're in the Bay Area, you absolutely have to check it out.
That's cool.
Yeah. You have any questions, Kev?
What was it like talking to Ciro Nieli?
Oh, he's a great guy. He actually came out for our opening reception 2 weeks ago, and he spent about 4 hours nonstop sketching for fans, talking to people, answering all their questions about the cartoon. I mentioned, I talked about myself being a longtime Turtles fan, but he's actually one of the first Turtles fans, if you can believe it. Back in 1984, when the first issue of the first comic book came out, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird sold it at the Portsmouth Minicon in New Hampshire, and they did okay there, but a big part of that 3,000 issue print run that they had at the very beginning went to local comic shops. And Ciro, who was growing up, I think near Philadelphia, he told his mom, "We have to go to our comic shop. We have to go right now. I have to find this turtle book that I just heard about." And he bought the first print of the first issue off the rack at his local comic shop. That's dedication. So he's been a fan since May 1984. When he heard that Nickelodeon had gotten the license to do the new cartoon, he just went to his office, he started sketching, and he said, I know I worked on Teen Titans, so I know how to do adventure comedy. He said, "I'm your guy, you've got to let me do this." So much the way that I did write this book, Ciro was even more dedicated, even more diehard. and he told Nickelodeon, "I'm absolutely the guy who has to do your new cartoon."
Yeah, that's fantastic.
He's a collector too. He's got original artwork from Eastman and Laird, and from some of his favorites over the years. So he's as genuine a fan as you can get.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And there has been no better person to do the Nickelodeon series than somebody who is a dedicated fan to the original, and all the way back to when the comic books came out.
That's how I feel. I'm glad that they chose him to be the executive producer. I know from seeing interviews in his office when he was on Talking Tunes with Rob Paulson and several others, and he had like the Ninja Turtle figures displayed. He had the Triceraton figure from the 1991, I think, and he was just, you could tell easily that he was a true diehard Turtles fan, and I was so comfortable having him behind the wheel of the new Turtles show than having someone who was just doing it for money. And that's why the show, I think, in my opinion, became so successful, was because he's not only like dedicated and passionate, but he knows the Turtles inside out.
Yeah, he's done a great job with it. He's doing something that should be impossible, which is taking all the different versions of the Turtles over the years, and he's taking all the best pieces and fitting them together into something new and exciting. So it's
oh yeah,
it's fun. If you're a fan of the '80s series, then you'll watch it and you'll say, "Oh, I remember that." And of course, they're still eating pizza. They're still, still tooling around in a turtle van and a turtle blimp. But if you're a fan of the comics, if you're a fan of the earlier animated versions, if you're a fan of the movies, there's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually have a question to ask you, Andrew. It's not Ninja Turtle related, but it's just in general. A lot of people have different. Stemming to the 80s, a lot of people have so many emotions, mostly positive, about 80s cartoons. Aside from Turtles, what was some of your favorite cartoons from the 80s? And, I know each show is different, but what makes you think certain 80s shows became very memorable as they are today? And that audiences today, and even younger audiences for a new generation, appreciate these shows as well.
Yeah, I was part of that generation that just lived for Saturday mornings. So even on the days when I wasn't going to school, I could get myself out of bed at 7 in the morning to watch cartoons, and would plant myself in front of the TV until American Bandstand came on around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Yeah, that was always your signal. Okay, it's time to go outside and play for a little while. Once Bandstand showed up. So I had that, and of course we had the early morning cartoons that you could watch before school. I'd rush home every day so that I could watch G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Oh yeah.
So those are two big ones for me. I actually got to write a G.I. Joe project that's coming out in September.
Oh, cool.
That's for Running Press, who published my Looney Tunes book, and Looney Tunes is another thing I obviously grew up on. But yeah, Running Press does these fun little gift books called Mega Mini Kits. So you get a little toy, and you get a little 48-page booklet with it. So I did a G.I. Joe one that's coming out in September. So be on the lookout for that at gift shops and your local comic shops. But yeah, G.I. Joe, Transformers, those were two huge ones for me. I've still got my massive G.I. Joe toy collection in my own basement.
Nice.
Here I've got the complete run of the 1980s G.I. Joe Marvel comic. A nice long run of the 80s Transformers comic. But I loved Thundercats. Super Friends on Saturday morning was a big one for me. Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends. And kind of the tail end of that for me was Batman the Animated Series, which came out while I was in high school. And that's another one of my favorites. But there's been so much good animation since then, and just over the years. Like we could be here all day if I talk about all my favorite cartoons.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I just have one last question, and then I'll give the floor to Pat. I just want to. What was your reaction when you? How did you feel if you had seen the 1990 Antidrug film Cartoons All-Star to the Rescue, and being that you love Looney Tunes and Ninja Turtles, what was it like when you saw Bugs Bunny and and Daffy Duck and Michelangelo in that movie?
Oh, that's
I know that was a trippy movie because it had like every character from the 80s in there.
Yeah, it's funny that it's an anti-drug thing and that it's such a surreal, bizarre experience when you watch it.
I know.
I know that there are any number of projects like that come out, and the people doing them have great intentions, but it's so complicated putting all these characters together and in a way that will please every copyright holder, every person who's involved in it. And I've seen a lot of projects like this come together, and it's a very difficult balancing act. You have to have every character has to have their and this was true in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's probably the only way in which those two are comparable, is that they used all these different characters together. But every studio wanted to make sure they had equal time, that the characters came off just as well as the characters from other companies.
Right.
And it's one of the cooler Stranger Turtles projects that exists.
I figured, because I know you said you like Looney Tunes and like Mike and Ninja Turtles, I figured that was like probably the only time, I think that was the only instance or example we saw Warner Brothers with Ninja Turtles. It was a very surreal film. I mean, I look back on it, and I was just like, wow, it came out in 1990, just like the end for most of those for those cartoon shows, like Alf and the Smurfs and Alvin and the Chipmunks and all that. It's really interesting. How about you, Patty? Do you have any questions?
Sure. What were some of the highlights that you experienced when working on your book?
Oh, there are lots of them. It was about a 2-year process, pulling everything together, and that involved tracking down artwork. That involved, lots and lots of interviews. It was probably about 100 interviews with 60 people, because I would start with round 1, and then I would have follow-up questions. And everybody I talked to would mention 1 or 2 other people that I should talk to. And, I did my best to find absolutely everybody that I wanted to talk to for the book. There are a few, there are a few people who don't seem to be online or didn't maintain friendships with other people who worked on Turtles projects with them. But, I got a good 90-95% of the people I wanted to talk to. Yeah, there are a few that really stood out for me. I talked to Ernie Reyes Jr., who was he did the stunt work for Donatello in the first live-action Turtles movie, and obviously everybody who saw the second movie knows him as Keno, the pizza delivery guy. And I grew up watching him on an ABC TV show called Sidekicks. Where he teamed up with the police to fight crime. I don't think that was a very long-lived show at all, but I was a short kid with a big mop of black hair, and just seeing another kid like a little bit older than me but about my size, kicking butt on TV. I love that. So getting to interview Ernie all these years later was great. He's going to be on a panel that I'm moderating at Comic-Con.
Nice.
And I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, talking to Ernie, talking to Vanilla Ice. I never in a million years thought I'd be talking to Vanilla Ice for any professional reason. But yeah, he's a huge Turtles fan. He collects memorabilia. He's got a Turtles tattoo. Obviously sees the early 90s as an incredible, really exciting time in his life, so he was really happy to talk Turtles with me. The 2 guys that were real highlights were Rob Paulson, so you mentioned him earlier, and yeah, when your phone rings and it's, that's Yakko on the other end with me, that was incredible. He was very generous with his time. He's very, very connected to Turtles, obviously, doing voice work in the 80s and in the current show. And he was just so incredibly gracious and generous with his time. But yeah, even beyond that, for me, was talking to Brian Henson.
Wow, Brian Henson.
Brian, who runs the Henson Creature Workshop, studied under his father, Jim Henson. And as long as I've been a Turtles fan, I cannot remember a time in my life that I was not a fan of the Muppets and Sesame Street. Yeah, getting to talk to a Henson about puppeteering is just, that's as cool as it gets. Wow. Also, he sounds a lot like his father, and that means both of them sound a lot like Kermit the Frog. So that's, if I were going to choke up at any point during the interviewing process, that would have been it. Like, I'm talking to Kermit.
So, regarding about your new book, and since, it's already completed and it's already selling in stores, will you be making any, appearances in bookstores and doing, like, autograph signings, or will you continue to, maybe promote the book in Comic-Con, alongside with the panel like you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, so we did a book launch 2 weeks ago. This was the world premiere at the Cartoon Art Museum. And that was a great event. Ciro Nieli, Mark Bodie, who was did a lot of work for Mirage in the 80s. Ken Mitroni, who fans of the Archie comics series will recognize his name. So they came out along with Felipe Smith and Aurelio Maramba from the current Nickelodeon series. So they came out and we were sketching. We had the Turtles live and in costume. We had pizza.
Yeah,
that was a huge, crazy event. We had almost 400 people turn out.
That's great.
That was a lot of fun. Yesterday, that was on June 28th, I did a book signing at my local comic shop, Fantastic Comics in Berkeley. And coming up after that, I'll be at the San Diego Comic-Con, and I will be signing at a combination of the Insight Editions booth, that's the publisher. I'll be signing at the Cartoon Art Museum booth, and we have to work this out with him, I'll probably be signing with Kevin Eastman at his booth. Yeah, the exciting thing for me is on Saturday I'll be doing a 30th anniversary Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles panel with Kevin Eastman, Ernie Reyes Jr., Townsend Coleman, who's the voice of Michelangelo in the original 1980s animated series, Lloyd Goldfine, who was a producer on the 2003 Turtles series. He's going to be there, and I think I'm gonna kick myself when I forget who else is on this panel. But really, yeah, if you're at Comic-Con, it's me and an all-star lineup of people celebrating 30 years of the Turtles. Kevin Eastman's there. That's all you need.
Absolutely.
But I'm thrilled to have Michelangelo from the 80s cartoon there. I'm gonna try to talk Rob Paulson into crashing the panel. For those of you who can't make it to see me at Comic-Con, look me up on Twitter. I'm at Andrew Farago on Twitter. I've got look up Andrew Farago Cartoons on Facebook, because my website's under construction, so those are the best ways to find me right now. I'm hoping to be able to have those and make those available and sign as many as I can for fans and send them out.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. You have any more questions, Kev?
What was your favorite toy from the Playmates Ninja Turtle line?
I've been a Donatello guy since the beginning. Still got my 1988 Donatello. I think with the soft head, I know collectors are.
I soft head Donatello as well. The soft heads have become increasingly rare, especially on eBay. And if you get them in mint-like condition with the flyer, they go for like so much money. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, he's out of the package. There's no way I was keeping him boxed up. So yeah, my brother and I played Turtles all the time. That's my favorite. Although I gotta say, I really love the new toy line that Playmates has out right now. Those are such cool toys, and as somebody who likes playing with his toys, I love that. I love that they followed Ciro's designs so closely. Ciro and the rest of his team. The Turtles, the birds are really happy about that.
I know.
But yeah, as somebody who likes to play with his toys, I love that those guys are angular and they're so bottom heavy. So you put the Turtles down and they stand up. You don't have to worry about them knocking over or stiff breeze, tipping them over while you're playing with them. And
What's your favorite character from the new Ninja Turtle series? As referring to like the new characters like Snakeweed, Dogpound, Fishface. Like who's your favorite from the new 2012 incarnation that they've created?
They've done such a cool job with those guys. Dogpound, that Clancy Brown voiceover. He's just such a menacing character.
Yeah.
I've been a fan of his for quite a while, especially when he was the voice of Lex Luthor in the Superman, the Justice League cartoons. That guy's just so menacing. So there's that. Shredder's more intimidating and dangerous than he's been since the original Eastman Laird comic. And Karai actually is a real standout character for me. I really love what they're doing with her. I love her relationship with Leonardo, and it's such a great series. It's something that my 5-year-old nephew can enjoy, and it's something that I enjoy just as much.
So Andrew, I have a few other questions. What would you say are the pros and cons of each of the incarnations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
That's a good one. I was actually talking to Yul Carter. He's the owner of Fantastic Comics. And he was the birds are really excited about this.
Honor.
Well, you should be thankful that you have birds that are huge turtle fans.
Yeah. But yeah, I was talking with the owner of Fantastic Comics yesterday, and he said he was just heartbroken when that 87 cartoon aired because he was a fan of the original comic book, and he thought that was just so completely different than than the comics that he'd been reading and that what he really wanted to see on television. But there've been a lot of really fun things over the years. Like I said, the 87 miniseries and then the subsequent ongoing series. That's what turned me into such a diehard Turtle fan myself. The original Eastman Laird comic books, I love those. There've been a lot of really talented people to work on the comics over the years. People like Richard Corbin, all the way up through Ross Campbell and Matteo Santaluoco on the new series. I always prefer to focus on the positive stuff. Hopefully, if you read the book, you're not going to find out what my favorites and what my least favorites were, because I tried to give everybody equal time.
Right.
And obviously, it's going to be a pretty rare fan that really says, I love the Coming Out of Their Shells tour, or, I got a Venus de Milo tattoo on my arm. You're probably not going to find too many people saying that.
No. Definitely not. Okay, so wrapping up with your upcoming book, what do you expect the future of Turtles to be? Maybe as soon as the animated incarnation and Nickelodeon will be over, and then as soon as the Michael Bay movie comes out, where do you see the future lying ahead?
It's Nickelodeon has some really great long-term plans for the Turtles. The current animated series has already been picked up for season 4, and I think actually, talking to Ciro Nieli, they've actually got plans, talking to Ciro and his crew. If they get to do this cartoon for 10 years, I think they've got enough material and enough of a long-term plan that, that's a really huge run. That's a really long run for a cartoon. And by the time they get bored or want to wrap up and move on to another direction,
I don't think they work.
That's probably going to be 10 years worth of reruns that we can have. The next generation, the generation that's growing up on this cartoon, or that grew up on the 4Kids cartoon, they might be ready to step in. Ciro might want to do this until he's 100. On TV they've got a great future. The IDW comic book, I know they've got plans all the way through issue 50 at least. And probably a rough outline all the way through issue 100. So they plan to be on this, stick with this for the long haul. I think they're gonna have the longest running Turtles comic book when all is said and done. They know what they're doing. Playmates is in for the long haul. Obviously, they've been around since the 80s. And we'll take a wait and see attitude with the Michael Bay movie coming out later this summer.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely have to see how that goes.
Yeah. If it's good, everybody is going to be excited about it. If it's not so good, if it doesn't quite work, the Turtles have endured not so great movies before. They've endured not so great versions before. So if this one doesn't work, they'll retool it. I'm sure they'll come back.
Yeah, definitely. Knowing the Turtles and knowing how successful the animated series is and the toys and the comic books, I think that, if the movie were to be good or bad, I think it'll do just fine. Just one final question right before we go. Now that you completed your new TMNT book, what will be your next upcoming book? Will it be based off of a comic book, or will it be based off of another cartoon? What's going to be your next project?
Yeah, I'm talking with a few different editors right now, so we're kicking around some ideas. So nothing definite at the moment. My wife is actually expecting, so we're gonna have a baby arriving.
Oh, congratulations!
Thanks. Any week now, so that's gonna take my immediate focus.
You think maybe that'll be something interesting that you would be interested in doing? Maybe taking your book and doing a documentary? Maybe exploring more in detail about the Turtles? Maybe as soon as the movie's done? Or do you think that may be interesting for you?
Fortunately for me, someone's already done all the hard work on that. There's a really talented filmmaker out there named Randall Lobb. I think they've made some announcements about this online, but he's spent the past... I think even a little bit longer than I've been working on the book. He's been going around interviewing people for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles documentary.
Maybe that should be the next person we should have on board. That should be interesting.
So.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
So he's the lab coat guy on Twitter. So drop him a line. Randall Lobb, the lab coat guy.
Okay, definitely.
He's been immersed in Turtles as well. He's been interviewing people for his documentary. And I think he got everybody but me for his documentary. But it's a 30th anniversary tribute, and Paramount was actually so impressed with the work he did that they are going to distribute it. They're going to actually distribute it themselves.
Wow, wonderful.
Which is great. Yeah, that's great news for him. I'm really excited about it. Looking forward to it. So that's good. That means I don't have to learn how to be a filmmaker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you already are pretty busy. I mean, you're a curator, you're an author, you're a husband, and now you're a new father, so I think you have more than enough on your plate. And you'll be doing, book signings, panels, so I think you're doing more than enough.
Yeah, and like I said, I've got a G.I. Joe Mega Mini kit, which will be in gift stores everywhere, hopefully in comic shops, too, in September.
Wow, that sounds very cool.
I just wrote the introduction to the second volume of Bobby London's Popeye from IDW.
That sounds cool.
Popeye's another character where he and I go way back.
Yeah, and there's going to be a Popeye movie coming out pretty soon, isn't there?
Yes, yeah.
So that should be interesting.
I'd definitely love to write a definitive history of Popeye, so editors, if you're listening to that, give me a call.
Yes, please give Andrew a call. He would be awesome for that. Alright, so I think that should be it for this episode of Turtle Talk. Is there any other final self-promotions or plugs you want to do right before we go?
I think we covered most of it. If you make it to the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco, and again, we're easy to find on Facebook and Twitter. Look me up. I am at Andrew Farago on Twitter. Happy to talk Turtles there. And you can also find me at Andrew Farago Cartoons on Facebook until I get a proper website going. And again, yeah, I'm as much as my schedule permits. Although I'm going to have a tiny little demand on my time coming very soon. I'm still planning to go to the San Diego Comic-Con, so please look me up there. And yeah, always happy to talk to Turtles fans.
All right. Well, that concludes this episode of Turtle Talk. Once again, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
All right, thanks for having me.
And that concludes our episode of Turtle Talk, and we hope to catch you in the next one. So, bye-bye.